Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, my goodness. Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance. Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish, and I'm joined once again by Chris Herrington of the Daily Memphian. Chris, how are you?
What's up?
Yeah, that's the energy we need.
Yeah.
Summer's ending is what's up. We got media day in like 9 days. I don't know. It's kind of soon.
It's coming up too fast.
Coming up too fast.
I'm ready for the season. I'm ready for the season. Yeah. I'm not ready for media day.
That makes sense. What, before we get to what the Grizzlies have going on, what have you been up to this summer? Anything fun?
Took my oldest kid to college, so that was a big event.
Oh, how emotional was
it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. My wife, got a little teary in the car, as as the cliche warrants, but
and you were just stoic?
Well, no, but I didn't shed tears, but I wasn't stoic either, Okay. It was a good experience. She was ready for it. She was excited about it. She's in the great city of Chicago, so that was cool. And ahead of that, we took our last big full family vacation, maybe so that was a good time.
Yeah, well, that sounds very, very fun. I know a lot of the Grizzlies players, they've been wrapping up their summer. A significant portion of the roster got married in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
Derek Rosenmark is smart. But we now, of course, it's all coming to a head as we're going to find out, I think, some answers about the Grizzlies in just let's say 10 days when training camp starts kicking off. So ahead of training camp, and maybe this is just podcaster brain of I've been thinking about the team too much. I'm curious if you have any of the same concerns. Like I started drifting from like optimism to concerns stage of the summer. I'm going to hit some other Grizzlies news in this show. We'll kick it off with some Grizzlies concerns. All right. I'm going to list the things that I'm worried about, and then you can rank them as far as which ones you think are valid or which ones you think is the actual most concerning. So I have
I'm going to try to remember all of these.
Oh, well, I don't have a long list. I have three things basically I'm kind of worried about for this Grizzlies team. When I say worried, I mean, this is why we're going to lose in the first round again, or this is why we have no shot of making it to the conference finals. So again, I'm not worried about missing the playoffs yet, but
somebody's got to in the Western Conference.
Somebody has to. I think it bears repeating.
There are 11 teams. I think they're a playoff team, and somebody's going to miss the play-in.
Yeah, I've been saying that a lot on my various shows, and like to reemphasize what Chris just said, this is not like, oh, this team that's cute thinks they're going to make the playoffs. There are 11. There are 11 teams where people will be fired if they don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, we're not talking about Utah here.
Yeah, Utah's the 12th. Like it's the Grizzlies, the Nuggets, the Mavericks, the Timberwolves, the Pelicans, the Warriors, the Thunder, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Suns, and the Kings. If one of those teams doesn't make the playoffs, let alone the play-in, like they're probably firing people, trading people. So here's my concerns. Yep. Three concerns. One, just injury and depth concerns. I think we have a lot of brittle guys. I don't know if that's fair. We have several guys on the roster who have missed a lot of games in their careers, and I don't trust our depth. So one is injury and depth concerns. Two is just overall our talent level, even when healthy, stacking up against the rest of the West. And then three, Ja Morant shenanigans, or just continued worries about off-court stuff. So out of those three worries, you want to rank them, or do you have any other worries that I haven't even thought about yet?
Okay, so that was depth, injury.
Yeah,
that was talent, and that was Ja, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so am I starting from biggest concern or least concern?
Yeah, go with biggest concern. Knock it out.
I'm gonna say the Ja thing. I think that's the least likely to be a thing.
Yeah.
But it can torpedo not just the season, like it can torpedo the era, and so like I to me that's sort of hanging over everything is and this should be an easy thing to get past. It should be a like goodbye to all that, like 25 games into the season, but we don't know until we know. And so there's that. I don't know, we could talk that to death and we're just it just has to be proven. Surely he's gonna, and it's not just, I think we've been over this. It wasn't just as simple as, he held up a gun on Instagram a couple times. That was symptomatic of broader sort of issues. And so it's not as simple as just stop holding up guns on Instagram. It is a greater like correction of behavior than that. But I gotta think, given all that's at stake, given how serious he is about basketball, that surely he's finally had the come to Jesus moment with the 25 game suspension. So, I
think critics would say, why wasn't the come to Jesus moment
the
getting suspended the previous year?
I don't know. So that's why it's the number one concern.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not the most likely thing, I don't think, to torpedo their season, but it's the thing that can most fully torpedo their season. I'll go with the depth injury thing, I guess, after that, just because the talent thing we'll get to, I'm not as concerned about. But so they really wrecked their depth going into last season.
Yeah.
It was a self-inflicted wound. They corrected it somewhat by trading the carcass of Danny Green and some second round picks and adding Luke Kennard, so that helped a little bit. But then this summer they basically did a 2-for-1, and I think that 2-for-1 is maybe an upgrade when we get to this third concern. But from a depth standpoint, Tyus Jones and Dylan Brooks for Marcus Smart's a 2-for-1, and Derrick Rose does not balance that out. Like, to me, that's not a 2-for-2, that's a 2-for-1, and so that's another hit to the depth. From an injury standpoint, I don't know. I sort of feel like every team in the league probably thinks their guys get injured all the time. Jaren has injury history, but after he came back last season, like played basically every game.
Yeah.
I don't know if I think Desmond Bane is brittle or whatever. I mean, he had that one injury. He basically played through it all year. Ja has a history of missing games. So even when he comes back, he's probably going to miss some games. The Steven Adams thing. I mean, Steven Adams and Zaire Williams are sort of the big ones. And Zaire Williams, it may not matter if he could get healthy and just not be good.
Yeah, I'm not sure it matters.
Right. But the Steven Adams thing, it's not just important that he be healthy. It's important that he can still be the player he was before that knee injury.
Yeah.
This 2-year extension. And age-wise, he should still be able to be. I think he's still 29 or whatever,
He did finally turn 30.
He turned 30. Okay.
After we called him 29 for so
all right.
long.
So he's on this extension for his age 30 and age 31 seasons.
Yeah.
The kind of player he is, he should be able to maintain what he's been at age 30 and 31. I just, but I think it's important for him to be the player he was before the injury.
Yeah.
But from a depth standpoint, they don't have, I think they really need one of those three big wings, not to pop in some major way, but to be a plus rotation player.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about Zaire Williams, David Roddy, and Jake LaRavia. I think the way their team is structured, they had opportunity to add a veteran wing to backstop that, and they added Derrick Rose instead.
Yes.
That was a decision. They had reasons for that decision. They were not primarily basketball reasons.
Yeah.
And so I think they need one of those three guys to take a step forward. And if not, I think they're going to be shopping at the deadline to try to add another veteran wing. But from a talent standpoint, yes, you do not have Nikola Jokic on your team or Luka Doncic on your team. But I believe, just like the Grizzlies believe, I also believe in the talent level of a Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson core, that you can compete at an extremely high level in the NBA with that three players at your inner core. And you surround them with the weird thing about the Grizzlies is they don't have like a top 5 player in the league, but they have such a bundle of elite attributes Like Gigi Jackson might be the best rim protector in all of basketball, right? If not the best defender, period. He's one defensive player of the year. Steven Adams might be the best screener in all of basketball, the best offensive rebounder in all of basketball. Luke Kennard's led the NBA in three-point shooting 2 years in a row. If Ja Morant's not the best downhill guard in the league, he's the second best after Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It's a two-man competition. Desmond Bane's one of the elite shooters in the league. Marcus Smart, assuming he's healthy, is one of the elite perimeter defenders in the league. They have a lot of elite skills of different kinds they can put together in lineups. And so I think there's a puzzle problem there of like, can you get the right pieces together at the right time and not, in sort of the scale thing of like you have too much defense, not enough offense, whatever. But there's a lot of very high level talent on that team in terms of both just high level players. I think Ja, Jaron, and Desmond Bane are all arguably top 40 players in the league. And then you have really elite, what's the cliche people use? Elite in your role, a star in your role.
Sure.
They have star in your role players like Marcus Smart and Steven Adams and Luke Kennard. And so I think if the pieces all fit and all click and you get past the Ja concern and the health concern, I don't know, man. I think the ceiling for this team's still pretty high.
Yeah. So I think I agree with you on the talent. If healthy, I think this roster, if totally healthy, very good. And possibly, a couple breaks here or there could make a conference finals. My problem is like, I've started getting worried, about the health and how that affects the depth. And I'm not even really talking about like the Steven Adams thing. Like, all right, let's assume Steven Adams comes back and let's assume Desmond Bane comes back. Like the thing you mentioned, they traded two players who played a lot of minutes, Tyus and Dillon, for one player in Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart in his career plays about 80% of his team's games. And that's not that many. And then they brought in Derrick Rose for maybe non-basketball reasons, but like Ja's out for 25 games. Derrick Rose doesn't ever he hasn't played over 50 games in a year, 7 or 8 seasons or something. And then you look at like Jaron, where even if you throw out the year he only played 11 games, he plays 80% of his team's games in his career so far. And I don't know if that's injury history is not necessarily predictive or prescriptive or anything not being sure if Marcus Smart's always going to be available, being somewhat concerned that like Jaron gets banged up a little bit. And then Ja, by the way, Ja in his career has played 80% of his games, and that's not counting this upcoming 25 game suspension.
See, this is where I wonder if it's a focused on your team situation.
Could be.
Well, let's say you're a Denver Nuggets fan.
Yep.
Is Michael Porter going to stay healthy? Do we trust him? How many, what percentage of the Nuggets games has he played in his career?
And they have no depth also. Yeah.
What percentage of Nuggets games has Jamal Murray played in his career?
That's a good point.
We got no depth at all. Like we had a Christian Brown as our sixth man. What are we doing here? That's not that much better than saying Jake LaRavia is your sixth man or something. What's he ever? Well, he's a second year guy who, whatever. We have no depth. If you're if you're a Clippers fan, it's obvious. If you're a Pelicans fan, it's obvious. If you're a Lakers fan, you're like, okay, how many games are we getting from LeBron and Anthony Davis at their age? Anthony Davis gets hurt a lot. If you're a Warriors fan, you're like, how many games did we get from Steph Curry? Really? Look at Draymond Green's age. Look at Klay Thompson's injury history. I think you can go on down the line. And for most teams, people who watch those teams every day can just rattle off concerns about that kind of stuff.
I would say one difference or one pushback to what you're saying is the names you just rattled off are all better than Grizzlies players, or most of them. These are all teams that have like apex players, and Ja we think is like borderline apex, but like LeBron and AD, that's a better combo than the Grizzlies have, even at their age. And like Jokic and whoever else, like the Grizzlies' strength was we have a lot of like 10 to 30 in the league players, or we have 3 of them, and then we have all these stars in the role. And so the strength was the Grizzlies' depth. And now that it no longer is, if we're just talking about top line versus top line, that's where I'm like, we might come up short when we play the Warriors.
We're having a different conversation
about
the
Suns. Yeah.
We're having a different conversation about the Grizzlies if we had a healthy Brandon Clark and then DeAnthony Melton and Kyle Anderson coming off the bench, right? If we had that team 2 years ago, and they don't have that anymore.
When we talk about needing one of those wing players to pop, as far as like LaRavia or Zaire or Roddy or whatever, are we as Grizzlies podcasters, and you as a columnist. Are we ignoring the potential Gigi Jackson breakout? I only say this, Chris, because
yes. I mean, no, we're not ignoring it. We're appropriately ignoring it. I thought you were
going to say this because
I thought you were going to say Conchar. Then
no. Gigi Jackson. I've been talking about Conchar the last few episodes. Gigi Jackson, 80-1 to win Rookie of the Year, which is a long shot, but not the longest shot I ever saw. I bet Brandon Clark at 300-1 once. So 80-1 is not a long shot. It kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Here's the real Gigi Jackson odds situation we should be talking about. Over under on his Grizzlies regular season minutes this year.
Ooh.
And I'm gonna set the over under at whatever Kenneth Lofton Jr.'s minutes were last year. Does he play fewer NBA minutes than Junior Lofton did?
That's a great question. Let's look up what Kenneth Lofton Jr. played last year. What off the top of my head, I would say 200, but let's see what if he
sounds about right.
Oh no, he played less. He played less. Looks like 176. All right, pretty close.
There's your number. There's your over/under number on Gigi Jackson's NBA minutes this season.
What's Kenneth Lofton Jr.'s over/under on minutes this year?
Well, it's higher than that, but it's not. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean,
whatever Laravia played last year, did Laravia play?
Is he going to hit 500? I don't know if he'll hit 500. Depends on the health of the guys above.
Now I need to know how many minutes Jake Laravia played last year. It certainly was not a lot. What's 35 times 12? About 414. So yeah, we'll put Kenneth Lofton Jr. at Laravia standards for this year.
Yeah. I think that's realistic talk. I think the Laravia number last year is the Lofton number this year, and the Lofton number last year is the Gigi Jackson number this year. And so if you're looking for wild cards, look at Conchar and Vince Williams. So look at
Vince Williams Jr. Let's go.
Yeah. He was the best minute by minute. He was the best player in summer league. I mean,
if you put together his 5, when he played 5 summer league games, his 4 or 5 summer league games, plus
he appeared in 5,
plus the 8 or 9 Memphis Hustle games last year. His stats from all those games put together are incredible. Like unbelievable shooting numbers, like banging a ton of threes. His rebounds like really, really strong. So yeah, maybe Vince Williams Jr. is our breakout. Let's talk about another very fun topic that had, I would say, it seems like it has some Memphians up in arms. Where on JJ Redick's podcast, Evan Turner suggested the Grizzlies should move to Nashville, among many other cities. He said they should move to Nashville. Also said maybe Vancouver. Chris. I would say my timeline is very angry, and they reacted. My timeline, a heavily curated timeline. They reacted by being insulted, by then lashing out and insulting Nashville, where I live. So
yeah, this is dangerous territory for you.
It is dangerous territory. It's pretty funny, but I thought naturally, if someone insults your city, the right thing to do is to turn that around and insult another city. That's the best way to defend your own city.
Right.
Chris, what's my best etiquette reacting to everyone trashing my city in their anger over the suggestion that the Grizzlies leave Memphis?
Ignore it and move on. I mean,
that's what I've been doing. People got talking about it right now.
People got too much time to be angry on the internet. I don't have the time to be angry on the internet about stuff. That's
fair.
I don't have it in me anymore.
Have you heard the clip? Have you actually heard the entire clip?
Yeah. Okay. I think I saw the whole clip, but yes, I saw it once. I'm aware of. It's just, yes, it was recorded on a podcast and disseminated, but it was just like a casual conversation of dudes talking. This was not Adam Silver in a meeting. This is just like dudes talking, and Evan Turner has no more sway on what's going to happen in franchise movement in the NBA than you or I do.
I mean, clearly it sounds like Evan Turner had a fun trip to Nashville once. Right. Or something. Like, I don't know what he said, but it was
hanging out at Kid Rock's bar, or maybe the Georgia Line bar.
Yeah.
Maybe he was on a party tractor going down Broadway.
Nashville's new mayor was coming after Kid Rock's, or mayor-elect is coming after Kid Rock's bar, but apparently Kid Rock bar owner is now trying to get more in line. Not actually Kid Rock, another guy who helps out there, but remains to be seen how the party tractors handled the new administration.
Right.
He might have run on less party tractors. So exciting news for everyone who likes to criticize Nashville for the touristy things. Yeah. I do understand obviously the sensitivity of the Grizzlies fan base, and like it's a small fan base, and it's the same for the Pelicans when people talk about the Pelicans, or the same when Timberwolves fans hear people talking about like Anthony Edwards, like should he get traded somewhere else? Like I'm sympathetic.
Well, if you want to be real about it,
yeah.
In terms of NBA markets, there are, I guess, they're either 29 or 28 or 29 NBA markets, depending on whether you consider Brooklyn a separate market from the New York Knicks.
Yeah.
Memphis is one of the, in terms of market size and market wealth.
Yeah.
Memphis and New Orleans are sort of separate from everything else.
Yes.
And New Orleans is perceived differently because they get an NFL team and it's a touristy party city kind of thing. Now, the reality is there's less corporate infrastructure in New Orleans than there is in Memphis. I think there may be less population at this point. It's probably close. I think the trend lines, when you consider climate change and other things, like New Orleans is like the shakiest market.
Yeah.
But that's me sitting in Memphis talking, right?
Right.
But objectively speaking, in terms of in total market health of places that have NBA teams, like Memphis and New Orleans are on the outer edge of that. They just are. Yeah.
It makes sense. And again, expansion is what the league is looking at, not relocation.
That's
although one thing, real quick, what is this update? I haven't been following it that closely. Can you give me an update on the state money and the fight in Memphis between where the money's going, as far as like, it sounds like they proposed a Grizzlies tax or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, a proposal leak is not even the proper word. A proposal, like a subject of ongoing negotiation.
Was it recorded on a podcast off the cuff?
Not quite, but close. It sort of went public, but it's not like some final thing. It's just, a subject, a moment in time amid ongoing negotiations sort of came out. So at some point, I don't know, a year or so ago, I don't know what it was, the city of Memphis went to the state legislature to ask for a certain amount of money for stadium upgrades in the city of Memphis. And it was actually for 4 different projects. It's for FedEx Forum, where the Grizzlies play, the Liberty, it used to be Liberty Bowl. It's now the something Liberty.
I just
Memorial
caught the Liberty
Stadium.
Bowl, so I don't know what it is.
Yeah, the football stadium where the University of Memphis plays in the Liberty Bowl game and Southern Heritage Classic. AutoZone Park, which is where the AAA Memphis Redbirds baseball team, Cardinals AAA team plays. And then a 4th thing was to build a new soccer stadium, minor league soccer stadium for minor league soccer team, the city already has, but to build them their own stadium.
Yeah.
So it's going to be those 4 projects. They were asking for something like $680 million. And what they got allocated from the state was $350 million in straight cash, homie. And the rest of it was basically different, revenue streams you could generate that needed state approval, tourist taxes and all this kind of stuff, right? Your typical financing mechanisms you see for stuff like this. But instead of this being allocated for one project, the way it was, in Nashville for the football stadium, it was allocated for 4 projects. It was like, here's the allocation, you guys figure it out.
Yeah. Which
sets up this natural competition, because what people quickly realize is that that's not actually enough money for all this stuff.
Sure.
And so it set up this sort of at least public competition and to a large degree real behind the scenes competition between the 2 major projects, because the 2 smaller ones just may not happen. And so you have FedEx Forum for the Grizzlies, and then you have the Liberty Bowl for University of Memphis plays, the football stadium. And so what seems to be happening is that the University of Memphis athletics department has gone on a public relations campaign to secure its piece of the pie. The Grizzlies have tried to basically be a backroom maneuverer and not go public as they are trying to negotiate for their piece of the pie. The negotiations are ongoing. There is some concern in some quarters in Memphis that the football stadium may get done first, and then you move forward without a completed deal on the basketball arena in the belief or hope that you will get a completed deal, but you may allocate money for the secondary project before you actually wrap up the agreement on the primary project. And that's sort of where things are right now.
Gotcha. But wasn't there something about like they're raising the prices on all Grizzlies things and then giving them that money?
So in the proposal that got sort of leaked out or that came out in the media, that was, again, not a final thing.
Okay.
It was a moment in time amid an ongoing negotiation.
Gotcha.
if you broke down the different funding mechanisms, there are a few problems here. One funding mechanism was requiring a new state hotel tax, a new hotel tax that would have to be agreed to by the state legislature. Now, a lot of people think the state legislature will not agree to.
Yeah,
so that's that's money on a sheet of paper that may not exist once you get. And then the other stuff was basically some new surcharges on Grizzlies tickets and merchandise stuff at FedEx Forum that, from a Grizzlies perspective, and they have not said this publicly, but I think we're on firm territory here. From a Grizzlies perspective, is just adding to their own ticket price. And the Grizzlies, I think, would say, if we felt like we could charge 5% more on our tickets, we would just charge 5% more on our tickets. So you're basically raising our ticket prices and then, quote unquote, giving us the money.
Yeah.
And so from the Grizzlies perspective, like that's money they're paying, not money they're getting. And so that's sort of where things are in the negotiations.
Hey guys, just a little break from the show to tell you that for a short time, Underdog Fantasy has massively increased their new user sign-up bonus. Now, if you sign up using promo code FBBF or by using the link in this episode's description, Underdog will double your opening deposit up to $500. Plus, in certain states, they will also give you a free higher or lower pick. So, if you want to win big playing fantasy sports, or you want to be like me and just play very, very small stakes, it's a great time to try out Underdog. Again, it used to be they would match your opening deposit up to $100, but now they will match that opening deposit all the way up to $500. This amazing offer only lasts until October 4th. So, there's never been a better time to try out Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code FBBF. And again, they will double your opening deposit all the way up to $500. Note, higher or lower is not available in all states. Let's wrap up with something that I've heard you mention before on your podcast. The Shaq Harrison addition to the team. So Shaq Harrison is the 21st roster member. I think if we're ranking the order of importance, possibly going into training camp. You had mentioned that.
Oh no, he's higher than 21st. If we're,
Oh, you think so? Higher than Isaiah Todd? Higher than okay. Higher than Josh Christopher. What are you ranking him? Go ahead, tell me.
Oh, Isaiah Todd is 21.
Isaiah Todd's 21.
Josh Christopher's probably 20.
Okay. So that makes sense. So, well, the idea being, you think he's ranked higher. He is
more likely to play regular season games for the Memphis Grizzlies than Isaiah.
He's the third oldest player on the roster right now.
Right.
Derrick Rose and Steven Adams. I want to say he's a month younger than Steven Adams or something.
More veteran leadership.
But you're saying he's more important. You would floated this idea that they might be bringing him in for training camp, not because they wanted to be on the Memphis Hustle as a veteran leader or something. Right. You think this might be some kind of audition for signing him once they can put Ja Morant on the suspended players list and add a 16th roster guy. Is that your projection, your idea? Do you have any sourcing for that? Like what's
we'll call that my understanding.
Okay. Great.
So my understanding is that, like, I don't think it's a done deal. I don't think they've already agreed that they're going to sign him to this extra roster spot.
Yeah.
And for listeners who may not remember, the way it works is you get a temporary extra roster spot because of the Ja Morant suspension. You don't get it until after he serves the first 5 games. So this is not a roster spot you carry into the season. And so whatever player you would have on this roster spot, he can't be on your roster when the season starts. It's game 6, this roster spot appears, and then you can sign a player to it. And so it's my understanding is that Harrison is a likely candidate for that, and you bring him in. You bring him in the training camp. It's basically they gave him what's called an Exhibit 10 deal, which typically is a mechanism for onboarding players onto your G League team. It's sort of a signing bonus for preseason. And so in this case, I think they're taking a look at him for that extra roster spot. Now it's possible, he doesn't show well, he's not in shape, whatever. They decide, we can do better with it. It's also possible they have some unexpected injury at some other position, and they say, wait a minute, maybe we don't want to even have a point guard for this. Maybe we need to sign someone else, right? And so I think they kept their options open. I think they like the idea of him for that spot. I think they're going to take a look at him. And at the end of training camp, if they feel like he's the guy for it, they're going to cut him and say, go sit on your couch for 5 games, and they'll re-sign him. So again, I don't think that's a done deal, but I think that's the idea behind it.
Yeah, I don't think of him as a point guard at all. Even though
he's
he's
he's a
Basketball Reference has said he's played some point guard.
He can guard. He can guard the one. Defensively, he can be a point guard. He's sort of a poor man's Marcus Smart. He's a plus defender, even NBA level. He's a good defender against all perimeter positions. He can guard 1 through 3.
Yeah,
and at an NBA, at least an average, above average NBA level. And he can handle the ball. He's not really a playmaker. He certainly is not a scorer.
Yeah.
He can dribble the ball up the floor and then pass it to Desmond Bane or whatever. You
know, he's the kind of player I love. I mean, like I'm he's like you called him a poor man's Marcus Smart. I was like, he's a really terrible Melton who can't shoot. Like he's just like he's a rebounding guard who blocks shots. And it's like, I love those guys.
We're in the same ballpark.
Yeah. So I was still a little surprised, but
to me, one thing, so when they signed Derrick Rose, to me, then you wonder, okay, are you going to need another point guard for this extra spot? I think before the Rose signing, because I was advocating like guys like Keita Bates-Diop or Joe Ingles, guy like that for that 15th spot, right? Yeah. It was the idea of, you can have your temporary extra point guard with this extra roster spot until Ja comes back. And so when you sign Derrick Rose, I mean, in some ways you think, well, does that mean they even need another point guard? I think this is a tell. If they end up doing this, or even bringing in, some other guard. There's some other guard they got. Campaign got
waived.
I don't know if Campaign would sign that kind of deal. I think he's looking for more security than that, right?
Yeah.
To me, if they end up whether it's Shaq Harrison or some other guard, to me that's kind of an indicator that they're not really counting on Derrick Rose, even when Ja Morant out, to play 15 minutes every game. Like is Derrick Rose going to play on a back-to-back?
Well, that goes back to my injury depth question, where it's like, if Marcus Smart misses one of the first 25 games, which odds are he will.
Yeah.
And then if Derrick Rose is unavailable, like, is this Jacob Gilyard time? Like, what are we doing? And I think I know months ago, I assumed Jacob Gilyard would get replaced on a 2-way and they'd find someone else who they were more interested in. But the fact that he stuck around, it seems like, do you have something to add here?
I originally didn't think that Gilyard. I thought that they would use that. So they had all these different mechanisms, right? They had a 15th roster spot, they had a third 2-way, and they had this temporary spot, right? And they were going to use those things collectively to add to their point guard depth with Ja out. I thought that maybe they would use that 15th spot again for a wing, a Bates-Diop and Ingles. Those are just guys I threw out. Could have, I'm sure they would have liked someone else. But because they still would have had the extra roster spot and the third 2-way. Mm-hmm. And I really thought they would use that third 2-way potentially to find more of a main roster fill-in. And the guy I pointed to, and he's no longer eligible for this, and he signed a full contract with the Cleveland Cavaliers. But last season, the Golden State Warriors used Ty Jerome in that way.
They had Ty Jerome on their
two. Yeah. They had Ty Jerome on their 2-way, and he played for the Warriors. So I thought maybe the Grizzlies would do that. Now they did use it on a point guard in Jacob Gilyard, but my sense there is that's not for Jacob Gilyard to play for the Memphis Grizzlies. That is for Jacob Gilyard, like, to help develop Gigi Jackson for the Memphis Hustle, basically. To give him a pass first point guard who can help him, get shots in the right spots and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think Ty Jerome actually is not 2-way eligible anymore.
He's not.
Yeah.
That's just an example.
He played enough, but no, he was a guy like you thought maybe a wing or a bigger player. I was thinking just all combo guards. I was just like 15.
Shake Milton's another guy I threw out.
Shake Milton was big for me. I people yelled at me for saying Josh Richardson too many times, and even Ty Jerome. I was like, I just want a combo guy who can maybe dribble the basketball. It'll be interesting if Shaq Harrison ends up being an emergency guard fill in. And then I'll love him because I like defenders who can't shoot.
But who knows who's going to get cut out of other people's training camps?
That's true. And we keep seeing guys. I mean, just like Ty Washington got waived with high draft pedigree. The Bucks picked him up. So yeah, you're right. We'll have a lot of probably other players shake free, and the Grizzlies will have the opportunity to decide if one of them is a better option. Well, Chris, thanks as always for coming on.
Thanks, man.
I feel like we're getting back in the season now that you're coming back on the show, right? That's the sign that Grizzlies basketball is imminent. Anyways, you guys check out Chris's coverage of the Daily Memphian. Listen to the Grizzlies podcast for the Daily Memphian. And Chris, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks.